Now we're going to give a little bit of keyframe animation to our camera. So maybe instead of this sitting here, if I press spacebar to preview, instead of just sitting in one spot, sometimes even if you're not doing a ton of things with your scene, it's kind of nice just to have a little bit of movement with your camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something called an animation track. And this is just going to be if I want to animate a value or a position or rotation or whatever to some object in the scene, I want to do that through an animation track. Now, if you do this to any other objects in your scene, I recommend making sure that, or trying to keep that object down underneath intro. Like hopefully it's a totally separate thing. You see how my camera right here is underneath your cutscene. And again, this is your root. Or sorry, intro is your root, has your playable director, plays a cutscene, and anything related to that we want to be down here. So to get a slow moving pan across here, we just want to show off some of the level. We are going to animate the position over time of the virtual camera shot that we started off with. So to do that, just click your camera or whatever game object you want to animate, click and drag it down into this timeline window, and click Add Animation Track. Now, if you do this, it's going to do a couple things. You can see it adds a animator component onto this whatever object you dragged in this case, the camera, and it links it up. That's all fine. Don't worry about that. But now, if we wanted to add keyframe data, we actually could. Now, there's multiple ways to do this. I find that for timeline stuff, it's just really quick and easy just to do the record button. You just have to be really good about remembering to turn it off. You can do custom keyframes if you want and set those. Either way is fine. But I want to give this some very slow movement once I have this animation track added. So again, just drag drop, animation track, and then it should be synced up. Okay, so and typically you want to do this one object at a time just to make sure you keep track of your record button. Now what I want to do is I want to start at the beginning and have the camera slowly start moving. So I'm going to click this record button. Okay, and you see how it's recording now? I'm going to select my object in the scene, and this is what I want to start recording. I want to start recording the position because I want to do something like this, right? You see, because I moved it around, it says, or it's saying, oh, this value changed. I want to start recording this value. Which is actually fine. So I'm going to move that around to get my initial keyframe. Or you could just reset it. You could just put the same value that's in here to start that keyframe if you didn't want to move it. And I'm going to start, let's say, right around here. Make sure that your timeline is at the starting point. If not, you could, either undo or stop recording or delete that thing. It doesn't really matter. I'll show you how to move the keyframes around later too. But basically, at the very start, the way this works, the way keyframe animation in general works, move the timeline to where you want and say, at this point in time, I want this object to be, and then change the values. And then move the timeline somewhere else. So at this point in time, I want the camera to be here. Let's kind of do something like that. Right, so marker first, then change the value or the object. So marker first object. And again, you can think of this as at this point in time, move the marker. I want this object to do this and then affect the object. So marker first object. Okay, so I'm gonna come back here and preview this. Hit spacebar. It's just slow panning. Maybe we can show some level stuff. And then we go back to the player. Okay, great. Actually, this is looking pretty good. Now, if you wanted to adjust any of these keyframes for whatever reason, actually, because we're done setting keyframes and changing values, make sure to click that record button again to stop recording. And once we have that, let's say if I wanted this keyframe to be a little bit earlier, we want it to get to its destination a little sooner and maybe stop for a second. All you have to do is double click this track right here. And that will bring up the animation window. And then you can, for this track, and then you can move the keyframes around. I'm going to click and drag this window, let's say right above the timeline. So something like right there. We only want just enough that we can see the keyframes. All right. So let's say if we wanted that to stop earlier, we can just, inside of our animation window, just drag these keyframes a little bit earlier, something like that. You'll see it update down here. So now it has a little pause before we go over there. I actually don't like that pause. I kind of just wanted this example to show y'all how to do it. So I'm gonna just have a little bit of a pause. We'll do like a little half second right there. Preview it. Slight pause, return to player. Okay, great. And you don't even need the split, and this is just what I chose to do. If you wanted to immediately cut to the player, like if you wanted to fade out or something, you could do that too. But now that I have this subtle animation to my camera, it looks a little bit better now. And we can have other animations too if you want. But I think it's looking pretty good. So we'll continue to polish this in future videos.